Charged with falsifying fake COVID vaccine cards for his patients. And as Eyewitness News reporter Josh Haskell tells us, the doctor's also accused of injecting patients with blood plasma, claiming that it would protect them from contracting COVID-19.
This is Dr. Donald Plants of Tahunga, accused of trying to exploit the pandemic by taking advantage of his patients, issuing fake vaccination cards similar to this one, and injecting some of his patients with blood plasma from other patients who had recovered from COVID-19.
Absolutely disgusting. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Just recently, 1 million Americans lost their life to COVID. And here we have an unscrupulous, medical doctor giving people vaccination cards that were phony. So we have people that foreseeably could be actually getting access to facilities that they wouldn't have otherwise, and placing the rest of us at risk.
No sign of Plants at his Tahunga office Wednesday. He's been charged with 10 felony counts of making a forged government seal, as the fake vaccination cards, like this one, contain the Center for Disease Control and Health and Human Services seals. Plants also allegedly told his patients who he injected COVID-19 plasma that the procedure would protect them from contracting the virus. Blood plasma is not a federally approved vaccination.
Not only would that not be tolerated, but we'll prosecute it aggressively.
In Napa, California last month, Dr. Julie Mazzi was charged federally in a fraud case related to COVID-19 immunizations and fake vaccine cards similar to this one. The 41-year-old holistic doctor allegedly sold her patients immunization pellets that she said contained a minute amount of COVID-19 that would give them immunity for life. Mazzi is also accused of spreading misinformation that the vaccines contained toxic ingredients and that doses of her vaccines would be safe for children, even babies. Plants, the Tahunga doctor, will be arraigned at a later date. In the newsroom, Josh Haskell.
Hello, and welcome back to my channel. Yes, this is the Anti-Woke Warrior, and you might be thinking, why are you bringing up this information about these doctors who are breaking the rules, so to speak? Well, one of the reasons is because I've actually been a patient of one of these two doctors. So we'll get into that. But before we do, I want to thank everybody for stopping by. I do appreciate you supporting my work. And I want to remind you to like, comment, share, subscribe. Make sure that you're still subscribed. And you can find me on Rumble or on Twitter. If you're watching me on Rumble or on Twitter, then I primarily post on YouTube. But let's get into this video here. We're going to talk about, we'll look at the article too. But this doctor here, this guy right here, Dr. Plants, I was a patient of his for years. I have a condition that he said he could treat after going to him for, I don't know. I'd only go to him like once or twice a month. See, he says he's in Tahunga, but he's actually, he's more or less in Montrose, which is, they're both north of LA. They're not really connected to the city. They're nice little areas, actually. If you were going to live somewhere in the LA County, that would be the place to live, really. But he, I don't know, there's a law enforcement who this other guy, this older gentleman is, who's saying that he's an unscrupulous person. I don't think he's unscrupulous. I think he has very strong scruples. Very strong scruples. I know him. Like I said, I saw him several times. But he does not believe the mainstream stuff. I stopped going to him because he said he could deal with my issues, and he didn't. He couldn't. Because he's a quack, really, when it comes down to it. He wasn't doing anything. Like, I'm very much aware of, like, what you can and cannot do with and to the human body. I don't normally talk about health stuff, even though I know a lot about biology and all that, because it can get you in a lot of trouble on YouTube. A lot of trouble. You can get your videos, you can get your whole channel yeeted off, you can get all this stuff. You don't want to spread medical misinformation like Dr. Plants was doing here. He has his own centrifuge, and he would take blood from patients who had COVID and then spin that out in his centrifuge and then inject it into people who wanted to be immune to the disease. This is all his doing. It's not my doing. I don't agree with this because it's dangerous. You don't know what you're getting from these other patients that have donated their blood. You really don't. There's a lot of things you don't want to do medically. There's things, and if you're some sort of medical professional, you can correct me down in the comments, but it's my understanding there are substances in food that can very much change the way the human body functions. However, when those substances go through our digestive system, they don't have that effect. They don't. The effect that they would have on us is completely eliminated. Whereas if those same substances were injected into our bodies, they would have a profound effect, or at least a noticeable effect. So I don't know this other doctor, this Mazzi doctor, but I do know Dr. Plants here. And let's take a look at, see what he has to say, or what this article has to say. An osteopath doctor in Tahunga is accused of issuing fake COVID vaccination cards and injecting some of his patients with blood plasma from donors who contracted the virus. Now, knowing him and what he thinks, he is giving these fake vaccination cards out because he sees the vaccination passports as a type of oppression and therefore highly immoral and should be illegal based on our Constitution. And so therefore he would be giving out those cards. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying that's my understanding of him, having dealt with him on dozens of different occasions. That's what he feels. According to Los Angeles District Attorney's Office, 68-year-old Donald Plants was charged with 10 felony counts of making a forged government seal and 10 misdemeanor counts of making false medical record. Wow, he's going to go to prison for the rest of his life. He's also facing misdemeanor charges for allegedly making a drug without a license and having a contaminated medical device. Yeah, his centrifuge. That's what they're talking about there. And fortunately, I stopped seeing him years ago, so I didn't get exposed to any of this. In a statement released on Wednesday, the district attorney's office said between August and November last year, Plants allegedly made his own vaccination cards and gave them to his patients. The cards appeared to be legitimate, according to authorities, and included government seals. Well, yeah, it's really easy. You just take one card, you scan it in the computer, and then you can print out as many as you want to and write whatever information you want to on them. It is disturbing that people, especially medical professionals, continue to use the pandemic as an opportunity to deceive the public, said LA County District Attorney George Gascon. Fake COVID vaccination cards are illegal and endanger our collective health and well-being. Plants also allegedly injected his patients with blood plasma from donors who previously had COVID, claiming the procedure would protect his patients from contracting the virus. The district attorney's office said blood plasma injections are not a federally approved vaccination. The DA's office said it is recommended that patients seek guidance from a licensed medical provider. Well, they were going to Dr. Plants. He is a medical professional. He has a PhD in medicine. So that's a ridiculous statement to say because he's a medical professional. The case is now being investigated by California Department of Consumer Affairs Division of Investigation, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, and the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Office of Inspector General. Yeah, so yeah, he's in a lot of trouble. Basically, he's done. He's not going to be able to practice medicine anymore. He's probably going to go to prison for the rest of his life. He's already 68. He doesn't look 68. He looks pretty good here. This picture is maybe 10 years old, but still looks pretty good for 58. Yeah. Well, you play with fire, you're going to get burned. And he was making claims that were just outrageous. Like I said, I went to him for a while, and he couldn't really help me, even though he claimed that he could, because he's just doing things that are not really they're not really approved to show any kind of efficacy. But we want to take a look at this right here, to kind of see the other side of this issue. And that is if I can get this to show, there it goes. California makes it illegal for doctors to disagree with politicians. So you do want to avoid fraudulent doctors who are, selling you snake oil. You do want to, of course, avoid that. You want to do your own research and understand. With the internet out there, you can learn a lot. And then you can go to the doctors and say, okay, well, this is what I see, and this is what I know. But at the same time, you also want to talk to your doctors and get their expert opinion. Make sure you go to a trusted doctor. Dr. Plants would not be one that I would trust. Let's take a look at this video here.
Sandra, now to California Governor Gavin Newsom signing another controversial bill into law. The latest legislation could punish doctors for spreading COVID misinformation to patients. Let's bring in Jonathan Turley, George Washington University law professor and a Fox News contributor. So, Jonathan, I'm wondering, in this law, who gets to determine what is and what isn't misinformation? Because if you go back to some of the things that were being said in the spring of 2020 about COVID, some of them are a lot different now than what folks were saying back then.
That's right. And John, that is the concern of the free speech community. This law is chilling in what it says about free speech in California. These doctors are being told that if they are viewed as spreading misinformation, it will be considered unprofessional conduct, threatening their very licenses. Well, as you noted, John, many of the issues that they cite, like masks and vaccine efficacy, are all being cited as areas where they want to stop misinformation. Those are all areas where people were banned from social media making statements that are now considered to be matters in good faith, issues that are worth debating. Back then when people questioned whether masks were effective, they were barred. And under this law, presumably, you could have used this law to threaten their licenses. But what was really essential about those dissenters is they forced a discussion, and some of them proved to be right.
All right, so what is true and what is not true about medicine. So maybe there is, a place for the Dr. Plances in the world who are trying to push the envelope. But our science is pretty well established on a lot of this stuff. And you need to make breakthroughs kind of to push the envelope, not just go, oh, well, this treatment will work. I know it will because I believe that it will. Who are the professionals? The law is going to defer to the professionals in this. So conformity of thought is now required whether it is online, on college campus, or if you are in California in a physician-patient relationship. PayPal recently introduced a $2,500 fine for anyone involved in the sending, posting, or publication of any messages, content, or materials that in PayPal's sole discretion promote misinformation. Yeah. So if you didn't hear about this, get rid of PayPal now, because if you're on social media and you're on PayPal and you say something PayPal does not like and they find out about it, guess what? They're going to take $2,500 from you. After a firestorm of criticism, PayPal withdrew the policy, claiming the whole thing was a misunderstanding and was not official policy. Hardly a convincing explanation from a site with a history of banning those it considers politically incorrect. Exactly. So even though they say, oh, that was a mistake, maybe it was. But at the same time, they have a history of doing this stuff, and maybe it wasn't. And maybe they're going to continue to do this without having it explicitly written out in their policies and procedures, right? I mean, they can just do whatever they want to. They have access to your money. Cancel PayPal now. Now. But California physicians have had no such relief. Governor Gavin Newsom recently signed California Assembly Bill 2098, making it the first state to attempt to censor what physicians can say about COVID-19 to their patients. This is a dangerous and likely unconstitutional effort that other states must resist. Yeah, you can't really curtail freedom of speech, and what the courts do is they default to the physicians, the experts in the subject matter. They always have, and they always will, because a judge can't know every topic. If I went to a judge and had some dispute about computer animation, he'd be like, I have no idea what you're talking about, because I'm an expert in that field, and he's not. He's an expert in the legal system. And I ran into this, actually, I had a procedure at UCLA. So big name in medicine, UCLA, right? I had a procedure there, and they did it completely wrong. It was not effective. And I'm like, what the hell's going on here? This procedure didn't work. So I did research on it, and I found out that they did it wrong. The procedure that they did works on young children. On teenagers and adults, you have to use a different procedure. Well, it's the same procedure, but it's more elaborate. And I'm like, what the heck? They did this wrong. And I talked to a lawyer, and he's like, the court's going to default to the expert opinion. So you're probably, you could pursue this and you might actually get something out of it, but they're going to default to the expert opinion. And if the experts say this is the way we do it, then this is the way we do it. But I'm like, I have the evidence right here that says that they do it differently on adults. So it's just how it is. The statute instructs that it shall constitute unprofessional conduct for a physician and surgeon to disseminate misinformation or disinformation related to COVID-19, including false or misleading information regarding the nature and risks of the virus, its prevention and treatment, and the development, safety, and effectiveness of COVID-19 vaccines. How do we do research on this then? This affects all physicians. Physicians work in labs to determine cures for diseases. It's not just scientists, it's also doctors that do that. So how do you of course, they're saying only to patients, right? But they could very well test these things on patients. They have to at some point. There has to be a point at which doctors test their drugs on patients. So this doesn't make any sense to me. California law requires the Medical Board of California to take action up to and including license revocation against any licensed physician charged with unprofessional conduct. But under the First Amendment, content-based speech regulation by government entities is presumptively unconstitutional and may be justified only if the government proves that it is narrowly tailored to serve compelling state interests. In 2018 Supreme Court case, National Institute of Family and Life Advocates versus Becerra, held that professional speech by licensed practitioners based on their expert knowledge and judgment is protected by the First Amendment. Like I said, the courts default to experts. The court, though, did suggest that regulations of professional conduct that incidentally burdened speech might be allowed. Speech that is part of the practice of medicine has historically been subject to reasonable licensing and regulation by states. It is not clear whether providing information to a patient, such as whether mask wearing works and is necessary, or discussing the safety of in-person learning, is closely enough tied to medical practice and procedures to pass constitutional muster. This will undoubtedly be decided in future litigation. Yeah, at what point do you say, oh, well, that was bad information, not misinformation? What if we have this new vaccine that comes out and it actually is like 100% totally effective. And they're saying, oh, well, this is the better vaccine. We should use this one. Well, how does that mean that every time we spoke about the positive benefits of taking these current vaccines, that's misinformation now? And then anybody who talked about that or suggested a patient get that, then they can be arrested or they can be disbarred. It's just crazy. Well, the statute clearly has constitutional problems in defining COVID misinformation, like I just said. The law's definition of false information that is contradicted by contemporary scientific consensus, contrary to the standard of care, this is ridiculously and likely unconstitutionally vague. Yeah. As the Supreme Court noted, professionals might have a host of good faith disagreements, both with each other and with government, on many topics in their respective fields. Yeah, they might. And not only that, but what about other diseases that are more deadly than COVID? We're all acting like this pandemic is like the worst thing to ever happen. It's bad. I'm not saying that it's not, but there are diseases that are much worse. What about like cancer? What about misinformation about cancer? What about misinformation about the number one killer, heart disease? What about that? How do we know that we are not giving people bad information right now about heart disease? I mean, there's a lot of people out there who think that like red meat doesn't do anything to your heart, doesn't do anything bad for you. Look at the carnivore diet, right? People just eating like red meat all the time. Physicians who inform their young, healthy patients that the virus poses a minuscule risk of serious illness and death to them is providing truthful information, even though other practitioners or the government might claim that doing so is contrary to the standard of care. Similarly, telling a patient as part of an informed consent discussion that vaccines currently have minimal effectiveness in limiting COVID transmission and small benefits for healthy children, but that they also have incompletely characterized side effects is not false information, even though the standard recommendation is that everyone should be vaccinated. The statute does not specify who is the arbiter of contemporary scientific consensus or COVID. The CDC, which has routinely changed its guidance over the course of the pandemic, Dr. Anthony Fauci, who repeatedly flip-flopped on the effectiveness of masks, it is unfair and likely violates due process to ask practitioners to risk their licenses without telling them who or what will judge their speech. Ultimately, California's law will harm patients, depriving them of information and undermining trust in their physicians, who will be scared to speak their minds. California's new statute is the latest iteration of efforts to enforce conformity of thought and mirrors efforts by government bureaucrats throughout the pandemic to pressure social media companies to censor those who didn't follow the official line. I, for one, think my physician is a better judge of medical information than Silicon Valley elites and liberal legislators. Correct. Now, why am I bringing this up? This is only happening in California. It's only regarding one disease, and it's only regarding the relationship between doctors and patients. I have pointed out some reasons why I might bring this up, but here is the real reason why I bring this up, because of the precedence of this. If this law does not get challenged as unconstitutional and then struck down, it could spread to other diseases, other medical conditions, all medical conditions, period, and to the rest of the country. I mean, that's not outside the realm of possibility at all. The way things are spreading these days, information-wise, this could spread like wildfire across the internet, and then we would all be stuck with these laws where we can't get proper care, where we actually start to backslide in our treatment. Why would we backslide, you might say? That doesn't make any sense. Well, because of, I don't know, this maybe? The Daily Mail. Woke pledge replaces Hippocratic oath. Minnesota medical students vow to honor all indigenous ways of healing historically marginalized by Western medicine, and fight white supremacy, colonialism, gender binary, ableism, and all forms of oppression. Yeah, we're going there. I don't know if you saw this. This came out a few days ago. It's freaking scary. I mean, like, legit Stepford Wives stuff. Incoming medical students at the University of Minnesota gave a pledge vowing to honor all indigenous ways of healing. They also promised to fight white supremacy, colonialism, gender binary, ableism, and all other forms of oppression. That's not your job. Your job as taking the Hippocratic Oath is to heal. So by fighting colonialism, what if there's a white supremacist that you have to deal with? Well, I'm not gonna help him. He's dying. I'm fighting white supremacy. So if he dies, that'll be a win for my cause. You're not supposed to be ideological when you're a medical professional, because if you are, you're going to bring your own personal biases to the operating room, to the examining room, and you're not going to give proper care to these people. You're going to let them die. The students committed to promoting a culture of anti-racism and acknowledged that the university was built on Dakota land. No, it wasn't. It used to be Dakota land, maybe. What was it before? It was Dakota land. Are you telling me the people that showed up there on that land were the Dakotas were the first one and the only ones to ever inhabit that land? Or did the Dakotas start out as something else and then evolve into the Dakota when they occupied that land when the Europeans came? Or did the Dakota go in and take that land from someone else? Because the Native Americans did that a lot. So don't be sitting here telling me that it's all the evil whiteys coming over. You know what? We won. The natives fought back. We won. Or we made a deal with them and they agreed to it. The pledge was led by Dr. Robert Englander, the Associate Dean for Undergraduate Education at the school's white coat ceremony.
That's racist.
It was apparently created by the students themselves, university officials say. Interesting. Let's take a look down here. Incoming medical students at the University of Minnesota were forced to give a pledge vowing to honor all indigenous ways of healing. I say we bring back ritual medicine that involves a lot of chanting, fires, dancing around, all that, just to expunge the evil spirits from people who are sick and ill. I mean, that's going to work for sure, I know, right? Got to get rid of those evil spirits by dancing around and chanting, including those that have been historically marginalized by Western medicine. There's a reason for that. Western medicine is not perfect, and there probably are some techniques that we could use that have been lost. The students also pledged to fight white supremacy, colonialism, and the gender binary at the school's white coat ceremony on August 19th. Ooh, the gender binary, really? So did you know that, all animals, and even plants, display gender binary? So we got all mammals showed gender binary, we got birds showed gender binary, reptiles showed gender binary, amphibians, fish, insects, and even, plants showed the gender binary. So what you're doing is denying that gender exists. You're basically saying that the science, the study of evolution, is all false. Okay, good job. In a video from the ceremony, Dr. Robert Englander, the Associate Dean for Undergraduate Education, could be heard reading the pledge to the new students, donning their new doctor's coats. It has been criticized by renowned critical race theory opponent Christopher Rufo, who tweeted out the video on Tuesday. He then wrote on Wednesday, "The most incredible thing about this clip is that the doctor almost certainly doesn't believe in what he's saying." That's not true. I bet he totally 100% agrees with it. By the way, if you live in Minneapolis, get out. It's just leave. It's terrible there. I talk about that more maybe later on. But he submits anyway. This is what Christopher Rufo says. Because the institutional powers now require otherwise intelligent people to falsify their own beliefs and repeat the left-wing copy-pasta. Copy-pasta? I don't know what that is. Let's take a look at the video here. We're going to blow this one up big.
With gratitude, we, the students of the University of Minnesota Twin Cities Medical School class of 2026, stand here today among our friends, families, peers, mentors, and communities who have supported us in reaching this milestone. Our institution is located on Dakota land. Today, many Indigenous people throughout the state, including Dakota and Ojibwe, call the Twin Cities home. We also recognize this acknowledgement is not enough. We commit to uprooting the legacy and perpetuation of structural violence deeply embedded within the healthcare system. We recognize inequities built by past and present traumas rooted in white supremacy, colonialism, the gender binary, ableism, and all forms of oppression. As we enter this profession with opportunity for growth, we commit to promoting a culture of anti-racism, listening and amplifying voices for positive change. We pledge to honor all Indigenous ways of healing that have been historically marginalized by Western medicine. Knowing that health is intimately connected to our environment, we commit to healing our planet and communities. We vow to embrace our role as community members and strive to embody cultural humility. We promise to continue restoring trust in the medical system and fulfilling our responsibilities as educators and advocates. We commit to collaborating with social, political, and additional systems to advance health equity. We will learn from the scientific innovations made before us and pledge to advance and share this knowledge with peers and neighbors. We recognize the importance of being in community with and advocating for those we serve.
Yeah, just what I want in my medical professionals. Worrying about different points of view instead of worrying about the actual science. In this video, Englander notes that the campus is located on Dakota land and many Native Americans continue to live in the area. So what? But he said this acknowledgement is not enough before saying they must recognize inequities built by past and present traumas rooted in white supremacy, colonialism and gender binary, ableism, and all forms of oppression. Ableism. Ableism. Let me show you what ignoring ableism looks like. This man here is a picture of a man I took when I was in Asia. He has no arms, and one leg is like half the length of what it should be, and the other leg is the regular length that it should be. And here he is working, because in the particular country that he lives in, they don't have a safety net called disability. You want to say that the people who are disabled are equal to the people who are abled? This is what you get. This guy should be able to live his life without having to worry about going out and earning a living because of the raw hand he was dealt. And besides which, look, I mean, who would you rather have go into combat for you? I'm going to show you the picture here. This guy right here? Would you rather have this guy being the guy who's like going to physically fight somebody to save you? Or would you rather have this guy here? I mean, really, it's so difficult to choose which one is better. I'm not saying that people who are disabled or have a disability or in any way are undeserving of rights and equality. But the truth is they just cannot do the things that we might need them to do in order to succeed as a society. I'm sorry that's just the reality that we live in. If you can't climb a wall because you don't have arms or legs, well, then, if we need somebody to climb that wall, then we're going to ask somebody who has arms and legs to do it. That's just kind of how it works, We can't have everybody doing every job because this is not feasible. People, man. The students also committed to promoting a culture of anti-racism, listening and amplifying voices for positive change, and pledging to honor all indigenous ways of healing that have been historically marginalized by Western medicine. Yeah. You know what I want to see come back is human sacrifices for healing other people. They then vowed to embody cultural humility and affirmed that patients are the experts of their bodies. Yeah, patients are the experts of their bodies. They know all of the internal workings. They understand the science behind how the human body works just because they were born into a human body. And the students concluded by saying, "We are honored to accept these white coats."
That's racist.
In light of their legacy as a symbol of power, prestige, and dominance, we strive to reclaim their identity as a symbol of responsibility, humility, and loving kindness. A handout from the school reads. So the University of Minnesota does not care about actual medicine. CRT is more important to them than the health of their patients. That was said by C. Sweckstar. That was a tweet by him. Black Phoenix says, "Yeah, I paid for and earned my MD or DO. That's the end of my obligation to your institution. No way I'd recite that tripe, and if they tried to withhold my degree, I'd sue them into oblivion." Yep, that's what you do. And then Padawan Braid Appraiser says, "I'm struggling to imagine how it must feel to spend years learning everything modern science and empiricism can teach about the human body, only to be told to honor aromatherapy crystals, trepanation, etc., like the astronomer being told the Earth is the center of the universe." How about homeopathy? Homeopathy is amazing. If you shake water 10 times in every direction, it maintains a healing ability. I'm like, what are you talking about, crazy people? And so it says down here, the pledge is now being ridiculed online with many Twitter users saying they will no longer go to a doctor who got their diploma from the University of Minnesota. This is going to be across the entire country. This is going to happen across the entire country. This is why I have this channel, to keep stuff like this from happening. Or at the very least, I'm speaking out against it. I mean, I don't think that I might be not doing anything, but I mean, at least I'm standing up and trying to do something. And then this talks about, let's see here. This is just a recap of those tweets. The university officials say the pledge was created by the students themselves, who are all idiots and should not be allowed to go to medical school if they feel this way. Media relations manager Kat Dodge told Campus Reform that it is common practice at medical schools in the United States to build upon the intent of the Hippocratic Oath to promote humility, integrity, and beneficence. That's what the Hippocratic Oath does already. You vow to not do any harm, and just to be, to treat those who are ill. That's what you do. So you can't say, oh, that person's too old, I can't treat them. You can't say, oh, that person's this race, I can't treat them. Oh, that person's this religion, I can't treat them. Oh, that person's this gender, I can't treat them. None of that comes into play. You just are there to heal, period. Each year at the University of Minnesota Medical School, the incoming students work with faculty to write an oath that reflects these core elements, values, and ethics the class aspires to uphold. They're They're idiots. This talks about Dr. Englander from there on out. And then we're going to come down here to the bottom and see these comments. There's probably a whole bunch. I don't know, but we'll read the top few here. Good idea to avoid these doctors. Yep. Such social justice warriors. Much woke. Much patting on the back. Whatever happened to do no harm or injustice? Don't see those words anywhere. Yep. It's Minnesota, home of the defund the police idiots. They are like Portland. Yeah. So Minnesota, Minneapolis. I lived there for about 15 months, and I visited a few times after that. I visited a few times before that too. It is a freaking nightmare. I lived in Los Angeles for 3 years. I managed to hold out Los Angeles more than twice as long as I lived in Minneapolis. That tells you how bad it is. And I think Los Angeles is the cloaca of the country.
My cloaca, or bird asshole.
That's how bad Minneapolis is. If you've never lived anywhere else, if you lived your whole life in Minneapolis, trust me, leave now. The rest of the country, as far like I said, I lived in Los Angeles and it's terrible there. It's a nightmare. Minneapolis is worse. So don't stay in Minneapolis. You will find a much better life somewhere else in the country. Just get out now. So yeah, you're going to have to do research on your doctor. It's not that hard to get that information. You can Google it really quickly, where your doctor went to school. Any doctor who went to the Minnesota University of Medicine or whatever this is, went to school in Minnesota, period. Just don't even bother to go to them as a patient, because you're going to end up being, oh, if you're white, we're not going to treat you. Sorry. Oh, I can't save your life because you're white. Oh, you're male? Oh, no, it can't help you. You're male. There's nothing I can do about it. Sorry. I mean, we got all these women who are suffering. Women suffer more than men do because, women's lives are just so much harder. I mean, all they have to do is look pretty and they can get anything they want. Anything they ever dreamed of, they can get it. Well, that's it. So, it's hard for women. It's just so hard. I mean, men, what do men have to do? They have to look good. They have to make a lot of money. They have to be tall. They have to be socially intelligent. All these different things. But it's so much harder for women. So, anyway. Scary things happening in the country these days. Please remember to like, comment, share, subscribe. Make sure that you're still subscribed. I will see you in the next video, and have a good one.